Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another class of Torah studies. This week is Parshas Eikev. We continue in the second portion of the book of Devarim. The third portion. And today, the lesson is a little different than the normal class we have. We discuss a concept, and today we want to focus on a very fascinating fact of when we're talking about every letter in the Torah is precise. Every letter is exact. The Gemara tells us that when Moses went up to the mountain and went on to heaven to receive the tablets, the Torah says the Talmud tells us he saw Hashem tying crowns on every letter. And he asked Hashem, what is this? So Hashem told him that one day in the future there will be a great man by the name Akiva ben Yosef, and he will study every crown, every little crown that is in every little letter in the Torah, and he will study building and building of halachas and laws of every little tiny crown in the Torah. So we know that in the Torah every letter is precise. We're not going to cover, of course, to understand all of the meanings of the letters. But what we want to focus today is on the concept of letters that are filled words, full words, and words that are missing words. What does that mean? There are in the Torah, in the Hebrew language, there are words that can be filled with letters that serve as vowels. We're going to soon give you an example so you understand. Even if you don't read Hebrew properly, we're going to give you to be able to understand. We're going to try to explain it so you can understand. And we're going to focus today on one missing letter, one word in the Torah, in this week's Parsha. But Rashi points out that there is a letter missing. The letter meaning the letter that is used as a vowel is missing. And he explains why. Now, we know that Torah, the word Torah means teaching. Because the Torah, as the Rebbe quotes many, many times, is something that is supposed to give you teachings for life. So whatever we study, whatever we learn, we come out with a lesson, a practical lesson for life. Now, what are we talking about? So we're going to soon show what the letter we're referring to in this week's Torah portion. And there is many words like that in the Torah some of them have the letters that serve as vowels, and some of them don't. There are many, many like that. And I'm sure each and every one has a reason why it does and why it doesn't. But as we go with the commentary of Rashi's commentary, we know Rashi usually does not comment on he doesn't comment on any letters that is written in what with or without the vowels. Why not? Because that's not his thing. Rashi is only explaining to us what we need to understand, to be able to properly understand the simple message what the Torah is telling us. As we discussed it many times, Rashi is talking to the 5-year-old. Pshutei shel mikra, the simple meaning of the verse. However, there are cases that Rashi does explain, that it does go into the reasoning why a word is missing a letter or is not missing a letter, and we need to understand why. And here the Rebbe comes, and the Rebbe really gives us, enlightens the teachings of Rashi to us. So the way we study a very simple, innocent Rashi, with the Rebbe's understanding, with the Rebbe's explanation, we read the whole Rashi in a whole different way. We understand the whole concept differently. The Rebbe takes a very simple Rashi, as we'll soon see what I mean. And the Rebbe will explain. So let's see inside. Yep, so this is the missing piece that says it all. What a single letter reveals about Torah, miracles, and life. So here is what we just said. That Rashi, his commentary, usually there's hundreds of places where the letters in the Torah are sometimes missing, sometimes not. And Rashi doesn't bother to explain. And this is Rabbi David Pardo explained, the Maskil David. He says it is not Rashi's approach to explain missing or additional or changed letters in the Torah. He aims exclusively to present the basic meaning of the biblical text. So there are about 30 times, 30 exceptions throughout the Torah where Rashi does comment. And we're going to focus on a few of them. And we're going to mention a few of them. And the main thing is we're going to focus what is brought down in this week's Torah portion. So, in this week's Torah portion, Moshe Rabbeinu continues to talk to the last speech before he passed away, to guide the people and to tell them what happened in the past 40 years. There were the good times, the less good times, what they did, the different experiences, the different events what took place throughout the 40 years. And he does mention in this week's Torah portion about the terrible event with the sin of the golden calf. And he talks about how he went up there after God gave us the 10 commandments. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain, and to receive the tablets, the 2 tablets with the 10 commandments on it. And as he comes down, he sees what's happening, and he had to break the tablets. So we're going to read inside. He says, in verse 9, it says, when I ascended the mountain to receive the stone tablets, the covenantal tablets that God struck with you. God made a covenant with us. I remained on the mountain for 40 days and nights, during which time I neither ate bread nor drank water. And God gave me the 2 stones, the 2 stone tablets, written with God's finger. On them were all the words that God spoke to you on the mountain amid the flames on the gathering day. So the 10 commandments that God gave to all of us on the Mount Sinai were written or engraved on the 2 tablets. And it goes on, and it was at the end of the 40 days and nights that God gave me the 2 stone tablets, the covenantal tablets. So in these 3 verses, Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about the tablets that he received from Hashem. He received the tablets from Hashem to give us to the Jewish people. What is what is the tablets in Hebrew? We see in Hebrew, if you do read Hebrew, the tablets is luchot. And we see that word mentioned a number of times. Luchot, luchot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. In these 3 verses, 5 times that word, luchot, the tablets, is mentioned. However, the way it is written is different in some of the cases. So to understand, let's look over here. Now, a crash course in a few letters of Hebrew. So we have over here, the first letter is Lamed, like the letter L, Chet, like CH, Ch, and then we have the Vav. Now this Vav can be served as a letter or as a vowel. Now, bear in mind, the Torah, the way it is written, here we have the vowels under and on top. The way it is written in the Torah, it is not written with the vowels. However, sometimes you have letters that serve as vowels. So this is the Vav. In this case, it serves as a vowel. And this is a Taf. So the way you would read this word is Luchot. The Vav makes the Chet, gives the Vav to the Ches to make it the sound of the O. Luchot. All right? The Vav, as we said, is a vowel. It can be a vowel as the sound U. Those are the 2 vowels it can sound. It can sound like U and it can sound like O. So in the last word over here, for example, you have the Vav after the Lamed. In this case, the Vav makes the Lamed. It is a vowel for the Lamed. So the Lamed, with the Vav after the Lamed, it is Lu. So the Vav makes the sound U. So this is Lu, Chot. Now here you have 3 ways of spelling it. The way it is written in these 3 verses that we just read, the letters, the word luchot, which means the tablets, the luchot, which means the tablets, is written 3 times in 3 different. It's written 5 times actually, but in 3 different ways. One is lamed chet vav tet, vav taf. Then we have lamed chet taf without vowels at all, or lamed vav chet taf. Those are the 3 ways it is written. And the question you may ask, why? Why is it written sometimes with a vav, sometimes without a vav? So again, as we said before, this is a question that is very interesting. However, it doesn't affect your understanding of the verse, because either way it is written luchot, which means tablets. If you take away the vowels, meaning I'm not talking about the vav, if you say just the letters, so this one with the vav reads like luchot, which means tablets. If it's without a vav, it can be read as luchat. Luchat means a tablet, singular. Luchot means plural. Luchat means a tablet of something. Luchat. Okay? Is everybody understanding what we're saying? I think it's pretty simple. We're just explaining the concept of this word, luchot, the tablets. It can be written with a vav and can be written without a vav. And if it's written without a vav, it can be read as luchat, which means the tablet of. Okay? So, Rashi, and as I said before, Rashi usually doesn't bother with these missing vav, not missing vav, because it doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect understanding. In our case, in this verse, Rashi does mention, why it is written without a vav. And that's what Rashi says here as follows. Luchat ktiv. It says luchat. The way it is written is without a vav after the chet, which can be read as luchat, which means the word luchat is written using different vowels, as if it means luchat, a single tablet. Why would the Torah write this about the two tablets? To tell us that it is like a single tablet, because the two tablets were uniform in dimension. That the two tablets were uniform. And the question here, we have two questions. First of all, this is what Rashi says. Rashi explains that the Torah deliberately made the words sound like a single tablet, because the two tablets were identical in size and dimension. Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain with two tablets, and they both were exactly identical. Okay? That's what Rashi tells us. That's why the Torah is mentioning this. The question is two questions. Number one, as I showed you before, the Torah in these three verses, it says 5 times the word luchat, and each time differently written. Why does Rashi only here in this verse tell us what the reason of the missing vav? Why didn't he explain it earlier? If it's something that needs explanation, why didn't he explain it in other verses? And the other question is, why does Rashi bother at all to explain? Right? We explained that there's hundreds of cases in the Torah where there is missing a vav, it's written with a vav, without a vav. Rashi never bothers to explain. Like I said, throughout the Torah, there are around about 30 cases that Rashi explains. Okay, so those are the two questions, and we're going to come with an understanding that it's every time when Rashi explains this, it is one of two reasons. Either when you read the verse in the Torah, there is something that doesn't make sense, and that understanding the way it is written helps us understanding the verse, or it could be that making a letter written, writing out the letter with the full vowels, has a particular purpose, as we'll soon see. So Rashi only comments on missing letters when the unusual spelling resolves a textual difficulty. If there's a question, there's a difficulty in the text, and the vav helps us understand, that's when Rashi points it out. Or the context calls for a stronger full spelling, and abbreviation seems to contradict that. What does that mean? You know, sometimes when you write something, you spell it out. When you spell out the word, it shows that you emphasize the meaning of the word fully. You want to give the full appreciation of a word, you spell it out. And this is Rabbi Tuvia Bloy wrote a book, it's called Klolei Rashi, and that is, he took the Rebbe's instructions on how to study the Rashi. And he writes as follows. He says, a five-year-old's view incomplete spelling. 5-year-olds view incomplete spelling as soft words and complete spelling as robust words. So when you have a word that is incomplete, when the child reads it, what did you see? It's incomplete. It's missing the vowels. I mean, it's not so strong. But if the word is full with the vav, with the yud, there's different spelling. If it's full, that means that this word represents the strength, the full strength and the meaning of that word, as a robust word. So they think the Torah utilizes spelling to indicate whether the object described by the word is strong or weak. So if the Torah puts it in full spelling, it is strong. If the Torah puts it with missing the vowels, that means that that object that the Torah describes in this verse is weak. Accordingly, Rashi addresses spelling anomalies even when the text is perfectly understandable, but the child believes the context calls for a robust spelling, yet the spelling is surprisingly incomplete. The same applies vice versa. What is he saying? When there is a story in the Torah, and the Torah tells us the story, and here is supposed to be a strong message, and the child reads it, and all of a sudden the child sees that the word is missing the spelling, that the child will be bothered. And that's when Rashi comes and explains why the word is missing, if here in our case you want to strengthen the concept. And you will understand it better once we bring the two examples that we're going to bring. So just an example, to example, what does it mean, a strong spelling? In today's day and age, people, especially in my age group, need to understand. Sometimes you get a text, LOL, how you doing? What is GTG, gotta go, BRB, be right back, I don't know, AIDK, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure there's so many more letters that people, they abbreviate those letters, and they're not as strong. But let's imagine you're writing a love letter to your spouse. Are you going to use these abbreviations? Obviously not. When you want to express something strong, you write it out fully. You don't use any abbreviations. And that's just to give us a little bit of understanding when we're saying that when the word in Hebrew is written with the full spelling, that expresses the strength of that concept that you're trying to express. So we're going to bring two cases. Case number one is the story with the flood. In the year 1656, from creation, there was the great flood. The 40 days that Hashem decided to destroy the entire world, the corrupted world. There were 9 survivors, Noach, his wife, and his children and their wives. And then the Torah tells us, after Noach came out of the ark, he went and he brought an offering to Hashem. And then Hashem smelled the pleasant aroma, as the Torah says in Genesis chapter 8, verse 21. And God smelled the pleasant aroma and said to himself, I will no longer curse the earth because of the human. For the imagination of the human heart is wicked from youth. I will no longer smite all living things as I have done. So what is Hashem saying here? Hashem is saying here, yes, I know they have evil tendencies, but it's not, in a way, really, it's not their fault. The evil inclination The imagination of the human heart is wicked from youth. From youth. From young one. They grew up like that. So that is why Hashem said, He made the covenant that He's never going to destroy and eliminate, smite all living things like He did. Now, the word we are looking at now is this word, Mine'urav, which means from their youth. That means that the evil inclination is bad, is wicked, from the youth. That is the key point over here. The key point that from youth we have an evil inclination that God placed in us. All right? From the youth. It's not something that we develop ourselves. We have it from our youth. So that word really, you would have to have it fully spelled. Why? Because we're going to soon see that word can be spelled with a vav and without a vav. Here's the two ways of spelling it. Mine'urav without a vav or mine'urav with a vav. So based on the explanation, we explained that if it's spelled fully, that shows the strength of the word. In our case, what is the verse trying to say? That from the youth, from beginning, from the youth, they have this evil inclination. So that word should have been fully spelled. And yet, it is missing a vav. That's the way it is written, without a vav. What is he saying? When it's missing a vav, it means that when I'm saying from the youth, it's maybe not so much from the youth. It is weakening the word. That is not really from the youth. It says from the youth, but it's missing a vav. That means that word is not so strong. And this is what bothers Rashi. And like we said, usually Rashi doesn't bother with missing vav or not missing vavs. But in our case, when we read that verse and we see that this is the key point in that verse, that our inclination is bad from youth, God created us with that evil inclination. So that word from youth should be fully stressed and written fully. And yet, it's not written fully. This is, in this case, Rashi comes and explains it. What does Rashi say? From youth, says Rashi, the word from youth is written without the vowel. Mine'urav. It means that the fetus has an evil inclination from the time it stirs, ninar, to emerge from its mother's womb. What is Rashi saying? He's saying that word mene'urav means youth. But when it's written without a vav, it reminds us of a different word. Ne'arav comes from the word ninar. Ninar means it stirs. So what he's saying, that when the Torah says that the evil inclination in the person is from the youth, he's saying even more than just that. It is saying that the evil inclination is there from the moment it is in the mother's womb. It stirs in the mother's womb. It's already have a yetzer hara. Okay? So that is why Rashi is telling us that the missing vav doesn't make the concept weaker. On the contrary, the missing vav makes the concept stronger. That not only is it the evil inclination there from youth, but the evil inclination is there from the womb, from its stirring in the womb, even less before the youth. Now, what does that mean? That is an evil inclination in an innocent baby. So that's a discussion for a different day. But in general, we can understand this. Evil inclination is not necessarily bad evil. The evil inclination is basically selfish. The selfishness. When a person has is born or born selfish. Try to take something away from a child, he doesn't understand, doesn't mean the concept of sharing, doesn't understand the concept of sharing. So we are born with that selfish feeling, and that's what we need to work on during our lifetime, to change that selfishness, to overcome. But in any case, that's what the Torah is telling us, that the missing Vav makes it stronger, that from the birth, even before the birth, there is already the evil inclination. And that's what Rashi explains in this case. A second case we want to bring, okay, so here Minorav is from youth, or Minarav, steering from the base. The second case is the case with Avraham Avinu. Our father Abraham, when his wife Sarah passed away, our father goes and he approaches, he goes to Hebron, the city of Hebron, the holy city. He approaches the people of the Hittites that live there, and he asks them, can you please get me to Ephron? He owns the Ma'arat HaMachpilah, the double cave. I want to have it to bury my wife Sarah. So the Torah says, Ve'Ephron Yoshev betoch bnei Ches. Ephron was sitting amid the children of Chet. Now here, Ephron is sitting. The word Yoshev is again another case of a word that can be written with a Vav or without a Vav. Here you would add a Vav, would be Yoshev, spelt with a vowel. When it's missing the Vav, it's Yashav, and it can be read as, rather than Yoshev, that is sitting, Yashav means he sat. That he just sat down. Yoshev means he's sitting. Yashav means he's just sat down. Okay? So the question here is, what's bothering Rashi? And in this case, Rashi also comments on this, why it is missing the Vav. And like we said, Rashi usually doesn't do it, except when it's needed. In this case, it is needed. Why? Because the story tells us of Avram coming to this distinguished gentleman, that Ephron, who is sitting amongst his people. That means he's a distinguished gentleman sitting among his people. And here, when it's missing the Vav, shows that he's not so distinguished. Yashav. Or maybe he just sat down. It can be written Yashav. It can be read as Yashav. He just sat down. And here Rashi comes and tells us, he explains, you know why the word Vav is missing? Because indeed that is the case in here. It is missing because he wasn't really always sitting among the people of Chet. He wasn't always a leader there. Only because Abraham came over. Our father Abraham, he was the king, he was a leader. And he came over, he needed to buy from him his property. That itself made him distinguished, made him the special, they gave him the special status. And because that Avram needed him, the people of the city appointed him then, that day, to become the leader. That's what Rashi says. And Ephron was sitting, says Rashi, the spelling is defective. It's missing the Vav. They appointed him chieftain that day. He rose to an exalted position because of the importance of Abraham, who needed him. Because Abraham needed him, that's why he became important. And that's why they made him leader. All right? So this is the difference. Now going back to the case of the luchot. In our case, we explain the luchos. What is the luchos? The Torah describes the luchos a number of times. But what is Moshe Rabbeinu trying to say? Moshe Rabbeinu is describing in this verse that Hashem gave him, that's the specialty of the luchos. What is the luchos? Godly tablets, written with the hands of God. Hashem gave it to Moshe to deliver to the people. The words of Hashem. The luchos were so unique, so special, so holy. The words in the luchos, the letters in the luchos were miraculous. We know the luchos were engraved letters through and through, not just one engraving on one side. It was through and through. That's why the Torah tells us that the letters mem and the final mem and the samach that are full circle, they were standing in the letters by miracle. Because if you carve out a whole circle, it wouldn't stand. And yet it was standing. More than that, it says the luchos you were able to read it from both sides. The luchos is godly miracles in a physical rock that Hashem gave to Moses. So in that case, Moshe Rabbeinu comes to describe what kind of luchos he is giving them. What kind of tablets God gave him. And you want to describe the luchos, again, think like a 5-year-old. He reads the word luchot, tablets, describing the full strength, the full power of the tablets. Would it be written missing a vav, or would it be written with the vav? Of course it should be written with the vav, because that shows the strength of the tablets. Like we said before, if it's missing a letter, that weakens the concept. And this is why, in our case, Rashi decides to explain it, because it bothers him. That when Moshe Rabbeinu describes the luchos, the godly spiritual luchos, the word luchos is missing, which shows weakening. That doesn't make sense. And for that reason, Rashi comes and explains it. No. You know, the missing vav makes it that you should read it luchat. Luchat is singular rather than plural, which means that both tablets were identical, and that itself is the greatest miracle, identical in size. Why? Why is it a greatest miracle? Because what is written on the tablets? There is 5 commandments on one tablet, 5 commandments in another in the second tablet. The first 5 commandments has much more letters than the second set of tablets. They have like 6 times more letters. It's like 500 and something versus 87 letters. And yet, they were all the same shape, the same font size, the same spaces between the letters, and yet the both tablets were exactly identical in weight, in size, identical. That doesn't make sense. That is a miracle. This is why Rashi says the Torah writes it here in a way that you can read it as luchat, to teach us that Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them that this is something, the miraculous aspect of these tablets, that they were identical. Let's see it inside. So you have 533 letters in the first tablet, 87 letters in the second tablets, and yet the tablets were miraculously identical, despite one having far more text than the other. And this is the way the Rebbe explains it. Says the Rebbe, carving the two tablets by hand that match each other precisely in weight and dimension is difficult or impossible. In addition, the Ten Commandments were inscribed on the two tablets, 5 on the one tablet and 5 on the other. There are more words and letters in the first commandment and the first 5 commandments than in the second 5 commandments. Nevertheless, the tablets were equal. One was not larger than the other. So the straightforward way to understand it is that the script was the same size on both tablets. The first tablets did not have smaller letters than the second tablets, and the spaces between the words and the letters were identical on both tablets. Okay, so that is the message. That is why the Torah writes here, and that's why Rashi points out that the tablets is missing a vav to teach us that they are both equal. Now, what is the message we're taking from this? A message from life. Says the Rebbe, there is also a very, very powerful message. And that, says the Rebbe, you will see by going back to the verse where Rashi comments. And when we read the verse again, we will see that that word tablets is mentioned twice on these letters. There is two things that the way the Torah describes what kind of tablets, and where did the Torah choose to have the word missing the vav? Look at this verse. Text in the verse number 11, chapter 9, number 11. Says the Torah. Vayehi mikitz abayim yoim abayim laila, and it was in the end of the 40 days and nights that God gave me the 2 stone tablets, the covenantal tablets. The 2 stone tablets. The 2 covenantal tablets. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us 2 aspects of these tablets. These tablets are made of stone. And what are these tablets? These are tablets of the covenant, the Brit, the covenant that Hashem made with us, with the Jewish people. The question is, which tablets describes more the spiritual aspect of it? Is it the stone tablets or the covenantal tablets? Obviously, the covenantal tablets expresses more the spiritual part of it. But yet, where does the Torah indicate that there is a missing a vav to tell us that they're both equal? Not when the Torah says Luchot Abrit. When it says Luchos Abris, the covenantal tablets, it does have a vav. When it says Luchot Avanim, the stone tablets, this is when the vav is missing. So the question is, wouldn't it make sense to do it the other way around? If we just explained that a concept of missing vav represents the spirituality, the miracle of the tablets, that makes more sense to describe the covenantal tablets when you call them the covenantal tablets. Here says the Rebbe that this is the message. You see, when Moshe Rabbeinu, when he picked up the tablets, there were tablets of stone, sapphire stone, and they were like a body with a soul. The letters was like with a soul in the body. And when Moshe Rabbeinu came down to the mountain, he saw the sin of the golden calf. Our sages tell us that the letters, the spirituality removed themselves from the tablets, and it became so heavy for him, and that's why he broke it. And Moshe Halshich says as follows: the tablets were essentially spiritual because God fashioned them. However, upon arriving to the place where the Jews were worshiping the golden calf, their sanctity disappeared. At this point, Moses said, I grasped 2 tablets. Until this point, their extreme spirituality made it impossible to grasp them physically. At best, they rested on Moses' hands. Now the sanctity faded, and Moses was able to grasp them in a tangible way. He was grasping those tablets because the spirituality is faded. This reflects our sages' teaching on the passage. He saw the calf. Our sages observe that he saw the letters from the script floating in the air. At first, the tablets were like a body with a soul residing in it. The sacred words of the commandments were like a soul to the tablets. Stone body, however, where the sin took place, the tablets, soul, and spirituality floated away, and they became instantly heavy like dead weight. This is perhaps why Moses said, I grasped the 2 tablets. All that was left was the tangible element of the tablets, which could be physically grasped. The spirituality floated away and receded. Thus, Moses could only grasp the tangible stone. That's what happened. Moshe carried the heavy sapphire tablets easily because their holy letters lightened them. But when the letters floated away upon his return to earth, the tablets' sanctity vanished, leaving Moses struggling with their dead weight. So this is the message here. That you have the luchos avanim, the stone tablets, and you have the covenantal tablets. And here, says the Rebbe, is really the deeper message. One would think that where do we have a connection to the spirituality? Only in the tablets, where in the covenantal tablets, the way it is up in heaven, the way Moses carried it in the mountain. But here the Torah says, when does the Torah choose to use the word luchat to express the miracle aspect of the luchos? When it describes luchot avanim, the stone tablets. And why is that important? It is important because our life, we have our spiritual life. We can live in a spiritual way, in a holy way, studying Torah, praying, and so on. But really, ultimately, where do we see them? How do we carry in the miracle? And what is the purpose of the world to bring that miracle into the stone, into our physical life? And that is done how? Through acts of mitzvahs. Putting on the tefillin, putting on the mezuzah, giving tzedakah. The acts of the mitzvahs, that is what brings the spirituality into the physical aspect, into the stone aspect of the tablets. So that's what it is. Luchot Abrit, the covenantal tablets, represents the soul of the tablets. Luchot Avanim, the stone tablets, represents the body of the tablets. And here is our point is to bring it into the actual action. Says the Rebbe, the primary emphasis is not that a covenantal tablets had a spiritual godly element. The critical point is that the tactile aspect of the stone tablets, the aspect Moses broke, was also godly. So this applies to the extent that the two tangible tablets were identical and paradoxical. Though one tablet had many more letters and words than the other, they were similar in shape and size. Because the purpose of the tablets is not to show us how holy the heavens are, but to bring the holiness of heaven down to earth. And that is the answer why Rashi points out and why the Torah points out the luchat, the singular form in the stone tablets. Our sages tell us, now these tablets we had real godly spiritual being existence in this physical world in the tablets. They were in the holy temple, in the ark, in the holy ark. Now the temple was destroyed. Our sages tell us that once the temple was destroyed, where does Hashem bring himself? Is in the study of Torah, specifically when we study halacha, the law. When we study Torah on earth, we draw down the heavenly sanctity of the tablets. As our sages tells us in the Talmud, since the temple was destroyed, God's only dwelling on earth is the 4 cubits of those who study halacha. Not just the Torah, but specifically halacha, the law. And even if one person sits and studies the Torah, the divine presence is with him, our sages tell us. But ultimately, where do we need to take this? Is to actual mitzvahs. The goal is to move beyond the studying of the Torah to actually practicing its teachings. As the Alter Rebbe brings from the Zohar, it says in the Zohar, the Alter Rebbe quotes it in the Tanya, it says the wise person's eyes are in his head. Why? Because the light of the divine presence hovers over their head. Wise people keep their eyes, their interest and concern and words on or above their heads, meaning on the one who dwells above them. When you gaze at the light above your head, know, says the Zohar, that this flame requires fuel. A person's body is like a wick. The flame burns above the head. King Solomon cries out, saying, there should be no lack of oil above your head. For this flame requires oil. What is the oil, says the Zohar? Our good deeds generate the oil for this flame. So the good deeds, the actions. So studying the Torah is like creating the covenantal tablets. And observing the Torah in action is like recreating the stone tablets. The Torah study's ultimate purpose is to infuse our actions with holiness, bringing the divine presence into our tangible life. And that is the beautiful message, what we learned from one letter, one missing letter in the Torah, how powerful it is, what it gives us, the understanding, the depth of the Torah. How every single letter is the Torah holy, and ultimately we can bring the holiness into this world through studying the Torah and observing the mitzvahs. So thank you. Any questions, any comments? I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome, David. It was good to see you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Rabbi Cohen, one comment. I think we need to learn more halachas then.
Perfect.
Based on what you said, that's
absolutely. You're right.
so looking forward to learning more.
God willing. Yes.